Welcome back. This is Rito here with a special video. A lot of people have recommended that I combine all of the intro cinematics and lore segments into one video, where it's just the compilation of all the storyline elements for Magnus the Mage. So that is what I've done. I've combined all of them together at the end of this series so you can watch them all in order. I hope you enjoy, and if you haven't already seen the series, be sure to check it out. It was such a fun series. We did Death Mode, Mage class in Calamity, and it was a great challenge and a lot of fun. So now I'll start with the intro for episode 1. This is a story of a young man named Magnus. Growing up in Anna the Archer's floating castle, Magnus heard countless stories of her adventures and legendary deeds. Anna faced the incinerating fires of Providence, the profaned goddess. Anna defeated a cosmic worm called the Devourer of Gods. She even bested the legendary jungle dragon Yaren. Most of all, she defeated the supreme evil, Calamitas. She was so strong, she wielded a bow of heavenly powers. Naturally, Magnus grew up aspiring to be a powerful archer like Anna. He would go outside the castle every day so he could practice his skills with a bow, but Magnus quickly learned that archery was not one of his strengths. Frustrated after a difficult day of training, Magnus told the wizard all about his struggles. Hoping to help the young man, his friend the wizard offered to teach Magnus magic. For the next few months, Magnus studied and trained with the wizard. When he used his first spell, it felt right. He learned magic at a rapid pace and couldn't wait to practice every day. He had found his passion, and life was good for Magnus at Anna's castle. Until one day, when everything changed. Calamitas knew she had been bested by Anna, so she devised another way to get her revenge. Calamitas summoned the Devourer of Gods, knowing that Anna would take the fight away from the castle to protect her friends. Then when Anna was gone, Calamitas used her supreme powers to open a portal to trap Magnus and all of the others in the corrupt nether realm. A magical dimension, apart from time and natural laws. Here they would be trapped forever. After defeating the Devourer of Gods, Anna returned and was devastated to find Magnus and all of her friends gone. There were no remains. They had simply vanished without a trace. Anna searched everywhere, from the sulphurous sea to the ocean, but couldn't find any of them. Magnus and the others were on their own now. Whether by luck, fate, or Magnus's natural gift for magic, he was incredibly able to escape Calamitas' magic trap. He fought with all of his might, in agony, to escape the portal. He vowed to devote his life to finding his friends, no matter the costs. This is the story of Magnus the Mage. Over the next few years, Magnus built a tower beside the portal. He collected books and all sorts of magical objects to learn everything he could about the corruption. Eventually, he had a breakthrough. He learned that with the right focus, he could draw upon his anger towards Supreme Calamitas to pass between the corrupt Netherrealm and back again. When he came through the portal, his friends were overjoyed to see him. However, the excitement of their reunion diminished when they realized that they were unable to pass through the portal. They had been trapped in the realm for too long. Their connection to the world of Terraria was almost gone. Even though they were still trapped, they offered all of their services to Magnus to help him along his journey. Magnus was one step closer to saving his friends, and his commitment to studying and learning was stronger than ever. Deep in the caverns, a goblin scout reported of a new tower that had been built with magical treasures to be looted. The goblin tinkerer argued with the others, saying that no good would come from picking a fight with a mage. The goblin tinkerer suggested attempting to reach out in a peaceful manner. For this, the overconfident goblins tied him up and started sounding the war horns. Their war against Magnus had begun. Magnus has found himself a bit troubled with the burden of saving all of his friends. Now that he's a bit more powerful and more comfortable with his surroundings, he started venturing out in the evenings. He often goes walking, searching for fallen stars, and wandering through the desert. It's a good place to clear his head, look up at the stars, and think. Although lately, he started hearing rumblings and the sounds of a creature deep below the sand. He will find no solitude in the desert until he deals with whatever threat is looming. He rushed back to the library to start learning more about what could be causing this sound. He learned of a monster called the Desert Scourge. He knew that in order to protect himself and continue his adventure, he needed to track the Desert Scourge down and defeat it. Above the Sky Islands and planetoids, at the top of the Terraria atmosphere, there roams a giant demon eye abomination called the Eye of Cthulhu. The Eye had taken notice of Magnus. At first, his demon eye minions could keep the young mage at bay. But now, Magnus could defeat the demon eyes with ease. The Eye of Cthulhu could no longer ignore this threat that had been growing in power. Maybe if he could ambush Magnus at night, the pesky mage could be dealt with permanently. Magnus has tried to identify the corruption near the Netherrealm portal many times, but it wasn't until he saw the ore that was dropped from the Eye of Cthulhu that he suddenly realized what the blue material was. The portal was built on demonite. West of his tower, and past the snow biome, he knew of deep corruption tunnels with similar materials to the portal. There were mysterious orbs deep in the corruption. Could these be a clue to opening the portal for his friends? Or would breaking these orbs unleash more evil upon the land? There was only one way to find out. After defeating a giant mushroom monster called Crabulon, the terrifying Eater of Worlds, and besting the powerful Hive Mind, Magnus had numerous new ores available to collect. A meteorite had landed far to the east, aerolite was now spread across the world, and Hellstone was now ready to be looted with a new powerful pickaxe made from pure demonite. It was time for Magnus to grab his pickaxe, a spelunker potion, roll up his sleeves, and start mining. When Magnus had previously explored the jungle, he saw something that continued to trouble him. He had seen beehives half the size of his tower. When he looked inside, he saw huge larvae. After thinking about what he saw, he decided to go back and eliminate the hive larvas to prevent the bee threat from growing. Or at least, that was the plan. Magnus had heard rumors of a dungeon far to the west beside the sulphurous sea. With his new magical powers, he set off to investigate the mysterious dungeon. He was greeted by a suspicious and grumpy man who told Magnus to leave. Magnus politely persisted and asked if he could enter the building. Then, out of nowhere, the suspicious man morphed into a horrifying, four-armed skeleton monstrosity. Magnus spent most of the night in epic battle against Skeletron. After the battle, Magnus entered the dungeon, and he learned that what he had seen was only the entrance. There appeared to be vast tunnel systems and expansive collections of forbidden magical books below. What mysteries and treasures was the skeleton guarding? One thing he was sure of was that whatever was down there was not going to be friendly. The path looked dark and dangerous, and he could hear the horrible noises of monsters below. So Magnus grabbed some torches and his favorite spells. This was going to be an adventure. Magnus had collected many books from his exploration of the dungeon. He also found an abyssal tome from the powerful slime god. He spent hours poring over these ancient texts, looking for any ideas and clues on how to save his friends. Between the different books, he compiled information about a forbidden summoning ritual that had the power to bridge the gap between the corrupt realm and Terraria. It did this by spreading large amounts of hallowed and corruption. It sounded risky, but from all the things he studied, it seemed like the best option. As with all dark and forbidden magic, there was a catch. In order to start bridging the corruption with the world of Terraria, Magnus had to defeat a giant spawn of the underworld, the Wall of Flesh. After Magnus defeated the Wall of Flesh, he could feel that the world had changed. He rushed back to his tower to see if his friends could finally escape the corrupt nether realm. He entered the portal and told them all about his victory in the underworld, but when they tried to leave, the portal still wouldn't work. After so many failed attempts to save his friends, he felt devastated, but he kept a brave face for his friends and assured them he would find another way. However, when he passed through the portal, all of his bottled up rage erupted, and he slammed his new hammer into a demon altar. To his astonishment, the seemingly indestructible altar crumbled to dust. He could feel a rush of power leave the rubble. Magnus wasn't quite sure what to think of this new discovery, but he decided to head to the corrupt tunnels where he could find some more demon altars to investigate, and maybe practice his hammer swing. Ever since Magnus broke the demon altars, there has been a persistent cold wind blowing from the west. There was almost a constant blizzard in the snow biome, and snow even started falling at the tower. The small flurry soon turned into a raging snowstorm, covering his tower. Magnus huddled up by the furnace to keep warm and think. Something was stirring in the snowy tundra, and Magnus knew he needed to stop it before the world was completely immersed in an unnatural winter. After a great victory against the threat from the snow biome, the weather started returning to normal, and Magnus thought he was safe. Then, he was ambushed by the Destroyer, a powerful mechanical worm. In the ambush, several of Magnus's friends were harmed. Magnus had studied legends of two other powerful mechanical bosses, and he knew his friends in the tower would not be safe until he defeated the other mechanical terrors. After what the Destroyer did, Magnus was ready to have the other bosses knocking at his door. He knew it was only a matter of time before the other bosses would arrive, and then he could have his revenge. Lately, Magnus has been busy learning challenging new spells and defeating powerful bosses. He has started finding himself thinking back to simpler times, before all the magic and boss fights. Back when he was young and lived under the protection of Anna the Archer, he would look forward to finishing his daily studies and chores so he could grab his fishing pole and go spend the afternoon at the pond. Ever since Supreme Calamitas trapped Magnus's friends, he has been so busy trying to survive. Maybe now that he was more powerful, he could spare some time to relax and fish again. After crafting a rod and going out to the pond, he was having such a great time fishing that he decided to try fishing in different biomes. But one day, while fishing in the underworld, Magnus could feel something watching him. He turned around to see what appeared to be floating lava, brimstone, and ash in the shape of a woman. The sudden surprise spooked him, and he teleported back to his base. For a while he avoided the underworld, but he couldn't get it out of his mind. He needed to go back and confront whatever it was that was lurking down there. The traveling merchant's trade routes take him through the sulfurous sea. Although dangerous, it usually isn't an issue, and the route pays very well. Every week, he meets back up with his caravan's ship, but this week, they didn't arrive. He waited a few extra days in the house by the sea, but still nothing. Finally, he decided to go and investigate. He looked out over the sulfurous sea and saw a big storm of acid rain off the coast. The storm must be the cause of the delay. He went to the edge of the beach to get a closer look, and he noticed the water was moving. There was a shadow underneath. It was a giant sea monster. He knew he had to make sure that this monster was destroyed before his trade ship would arrive. Fortunately, the traveling merchant knew of a powerful mage who could help. He rushed to the mage's tower. Of course, Magnus was eager to assist, because that's what heroes do. Back when Magnus defeated the Wall of Flesh and unlocked hallowed corruption and new powers all across the land, while exploring the jungle he was ambushed by a giant plant monster. He later learned that this creature was called Plantera, and it was well out of his league. However, with all of the power he had obtained and all of the new spells he had learned, it was time to fight Plantera once more. This time things would be different. Magnus was confident that he would triumph. Ever since Magnus obtained the Eye of Magnus from the rare rune wizards, he had been having trouble sleeping and having dark nightmares. Sometimes he would wake up holding the spell. It was like it was calling to him. At first, this scared him, but night after night, he became more curious. Why was the Eye of Magnus calling to him? Eventually, he decided to focus all of his energy and stare directly into the eye of the spell. Then he was pulled into a vision. He saw Supreme Calamitas taunting him. Then Magnus saw a Calamitas clone minion attacking his tower. Magnus pulled himself from the vision and knew that he needed to find a way to prevent this attack from happening. So Magnus devised a plan. He would summon the Calamitas minion and defeat it on his terms. Magnus is a studious mage. He logs all of his progress and research in his journals. He also likes checklists, and has had a good time putting together a list of all the bosses in the area that pose some threat and need to be dealt with. Once the quill leaves the parchment, the fate of the boss is sealed. Magnus calls it productivity, while others at the tower call it a boss-killing rampage. Magnus is determined, and he always completes his checklists. Magnus has traveled his world in search of clues to help him save his friends from the corrupt nether realm. His search for knowledge has taken him from the sulfurous sea to the ocean, from the planetoids to the underworld, and everywhere in between. Along the way, he has collected, studied, and cataloged books and magical tomes enough to fill the vast libraries of his tower. However, even after all of this, he was still unable to learn how to break the spell that keeps his friends bound. The only place Magnus knew of that was left to explore was an ancient jungle temple. Perhaps the civilization that built it had an understanding of magic and left a record of it in the temple. It was time for some archaeology. Magnus's exploration of the jungle temple was a success. Not only did he defeat the powerful golem, he also collected many ancient tablets and tablet fragments to study. Though hard to decipher, one thing was clear from these ancient records. The civilization that built the jungle temple worshipped three powerful entities as gods: the lunar god, the moon lord, the sun goddess, Providence, and the jungle god, Yaren. The legend hypothesized that whoever could defeat these gods could obtain the very powers of the universe. Unfortunately, the tablets that spoke of the summoning rituals were faded and broken. However, Magnus had heard of Moonlord cultists worshipping in front of the dungeon. Perhaps if he asked nicely, they would give him the information he was seeking. Or they would attempt to capture and sacrifice him to the Moonlord. Either way, Magnus would go prepared. Magnus's conversation with the Moonlord cultists didn't go as planned. The cultists attacked him, and in self-defense, Magnus had to handle the situation. Fortunately for Magnus, the death of the cultists was a suitable sacrifice to initiate the Moonlord summoning ritual. This caused magical pillars to appear all across the land, with powerful monsters defending them. The path forward for Magnus was clear: kill the monsters, destroy the pillars, and defeat anything else that gets between him and the Moonlord. After defeating the celestial pillars, it was only a matter of time before the Moonlord would arrive. In the calm before the battle, Magnus started to feel the gravity of the situation. He had actually invited the legendary Moonlord to his world. Magnus knew that there was no going back. Even if he could defeat the Moonlord, he would now be a target for even more powerful entities. This was a chilling thought, but Magnus knew that at this point, gaining power was his best chance to save his friends. If he could obtain magic more powerful than Supreme Calamitas, then surely Magnus could reverse the spell that binds his friends to the Netherrealm. Magnus had overcome so much, and he wasn't going to let the Moonlord stand in his way now. There is a delicate balance between the fundamental forces of the Terraria universe. The power of the Moonlord balances the profaned rage of Providence, the sun goddess. When the Moonlord was defeated, the balance was disrupted. The power of Providence was now fully unleashed. She sent her profaned minions to terrorize the land. Magnus could feel the goddess's strength and rage growing every day. Magnus had to take action immediately, otherwise, Providence would consume the world in profaned flame. Providence underestimated Magnus and his magical bubble gun. When she was defeated, Magnus could feel new powers being unlocked in his world. Providence also dropped a small rune that was emitting a distinct magical aura. Magnus studied the rune, and although he could not translate the inscriptions, he was able to decipher three symbols: the sky, the dungeon, and the underworld. Magnus took the rune to the sky, and he could feel that the rune's aura intensified, as if something was trying to escape. Magnus decided that he would prepare himself to use the rune, because the power held within it might help him save his friends. Plus, Magnus really wanted to see what the rune would do. Magnus had a surprisingly good time fighting the Sentinels. Once he figured out how the rune worked, it was like having an ancient boss checklist. He traveled to the various different biomes and was victorious against each new Sentinel. Amid the excitement of this boss scavenger hunt, Magnus started to feel that he was being watched by a powerful, malevolent force from the dungeon. At first, he thought it would be best not to disturb this entity, but after defeating the Sentinels, Magnus got a bit restless and needed something interesting to do. It was time to go back to the dungeon and learn what had been suspiciously watching him, and if need be, destroy it. Deep in space, there is a cosmic terror that can consume nebulas, planets, and stars. A single strike from this creature contains enough cosmic force to destroy a god. By killing the Moonlord in Providence, Magnus had unknowingly sent out ripples of energy into space, essentially chumming the galaxy and drawing in the cosmic apex predator. Recently, Magnus could see stars going dark in the sky each night. He knew this couldn't be good, so he monitored and recorded the changes. Until one night he could see something entering his atmosphere. For the first time in a long time, Magnus remembered what it felt like to be truly afraid. With the deaths of gods and cosmic beasts by Magnus's hand, the balance of the universe had been disrupted and broken. The once stable, corrupt Netherrealm was now experiencing what felt like earthquakes, as if the whole realm was on the verge of collapse. He had gained such vast knowledge and power. There had to be a way to stop these events and save his friends. Magnus returned to his tower, desperate. Time was running out. Defeating Supreme Calamitas before the Netherrealm collapsed was the only hope Magnus and his friends had left. Magnus could only think of one creature who might know how to summon Supreme Calamitas, the Calamitas minion clone. It took a lot of convincing to get the Calamitas clone to talk, but Magnus learned what he needed to know. Supreme Calamitas could be summoned with the soul fragments of Yaren. It was time to slay a dragon. Magnus had an epic battle with Yaren the jungle dragon. However, at what Magnus thought was the end of the fight, Yaren flew away boasting that Magnus wasn't ready for the dragon's full power. This just sounded like a challenge, so Magnus began preparing even more powerful magic. This time, there would be no escape for the dragon. So much had changed for Magnus since the days when he lived at Anna's castle. He had crossed certain lines and done things that he never thought he would do. Some of his actions, although well-intended, had disastrous results time and time again. Was he still the same child that used to fish at the pond? Or had he become the very evil he had set out to defeat? These questions troubled Magnus, but whatever he had become, it was because Supreme Calamitas put him on this path when she imprisoned his friends. It was time for Calamitas to meet the Magnus she had helped create, a Magnus that would show no mercy and take no prisoners. It was time for Supreme Calamitas to die. After a long and brutal battle, Calamitas finally met her end. Magnus rushed to the Netherrealm portal to see if this was finally enough, but the portal was still closed for his friends. When Magnus was about to give up hope, he could see the essence of Supreme Calamitas reacting with the portal's magic, causing the gap between the realms to get thinner. As much as he tried, the essence alone could not open the portal. Then he had an idea. Maybe if he could combine the essence with the power of his strongest spells and Auric Tesla, he could amplify the magic. It was then at the Draydon's Forge that he crafted a spell that could harness the powers of eternity. Magnus could feel the energy of the universe coursing through him as he unleashed these powers in the Netherrealm. Once the dust had settled, Magnus opened his eyes to see that he and his friends were in a place that seemed strangely familiar. The spell had brought them back to Anna's world. His friends were finally free. There was a great reunion between Anna, Magnus, and their friends. But Magnus's feelings were bittersweet as he realized that as great as it was to see Anna and his friends, it was time for him to go back to the life he had built. With eternity in hand, he entered the portal thinking of home. To his surprise, he emerged back at his tower and realized that he had transformed the corrupt nether portal into a cosmic doorway to Anna's castle. He took comfort knowing that his friends were finally safe and that he could visit them anytime. As the sun went down, Magnus climbed the familiar steps in his tower, pulled out some parchment, and smiled as he started his next checklist. In the following days, Magnus started noticing changes in the world of Terraria. There was a strong wind rushing through the trees, and an oasis that formed in the desert. Now that Magnus had freed his friends, he decided to study and test the changes in Terraria and share his findings with others. This way, Magnus could use his curiosity and affinity for research to help the community of other adventuring Terrarians. And those are all of the intros for the Magnus the Mage series. It was quite the challenge and quite the effort to create each and every one of those, but I'm so happy and proud of how it turned out. If you're new to the channel and you haven't seen the series yet, be sure to go check it out. It was such a fun series. This won't be the last you'll see of Magnus, as he will do the showcase videos for the 1.4 showcases. So you'll be seeing him and the Magnus Tower quite a bit more. Well, I hope you all have enjoyed the series and the compilation of intro storylines. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. I'm also going to be posting a new 1.4 series pretty soon, so be sure to keep a lookout for that. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.